Thanks, Susan. I'm so happy to be here and to share my love of bookmaking with everyone. The first book that we're going to make is a small pamphlet, and it's a nice basic book, and you can put as many pages as you want in it. I suggest starting with a small group, no more than 8 to 10 pages. You can use any kind of paper you want inside, and it all gets bound with 3 holes and a thread that goes and holds it together. And when we're making it, I always put a little T for the top on the pages and the cover, so everything gets lined up with the holes and you don't fight it too much. And when you're measuring out the thread, usually the amount of thread gets measured along the spine 4 times. So that would be 1 time from one end of the book to the other.
Look how high that is. Wow.
And then you move the thread along and measure out another length, which is 2. And a third length, 3. And then a 4th length. And that gives you a little bit of play, so you can decide whether you're just going to knot it at the end or if you're going to tie a little bow. And I guess I should mention the different parts of the book. The outside is called the cover, and the edge where it's closed and goes from the front to the back, this is called the spine. When you open it up, this edge where all the pages open and fold and come together, that's called the foredge. And this is the gutter. And then you have the top and the bottom. And this is a nice book to start with, because there's not too much that you have to remember. Whichever way you start with a needle, you're going to get the 2 edges of the thread to come out, and you can start on the inside or you can start on the outside. It's really up to you. So you can have a little bow on the outside where you tie everything up, or you can have it on the inside. And the kind of paper you use is your choice. This paper I use, because I'm going to use it as a notebook, is the copy paper that we use in the printer. But you can use watercolor paper, you can use drawing paper, you can use a lightweight drawing paper. Everything works. If you use a real heavy paper, don't put too many pages in it. Maybe 3 pages would work out great. And we have some photographs to show of the steps on how the book is made. Should we show that, Bob, or should I do this? Yeah, great. This shows the different supplies. There are glues, any kind of glue you have at home. We don't use a whole lot of glue, but sometimes at the very end, a little bit of dab of glue on the knot holds it in place. So Elmer's glue, PVA white glue, a glue stick is great. Tape, I use a little bit of painter's tape to hold the thread in place, because when you make a book, you don't really knot it until the end. And when you're tugging on the threads, it can be frustrating at the beginning because you just keep tugging the thread right through the cover. So a little piece of tape to hold that string down really helps a lot. And then the different kinds of thread you can use. You can have cotton thread, you can have embroidery thread, and there's a bookbinding thread, which is linen. There are two different kinds of that. One is coated in wax. I don't use that. I don't like the feel of it, and so I use the unwaxed thread. And if you don't have any of those around the house, feel free to use some sewing thread. It's thinner, and you might want to go over your sewing a couple times to get a little bit of weight to it. And the tools I use are a ruler, a triangle to make sure that everything is nice and square, scissors, and I have a bone folder that I use for bookmaking. These you can get at the art supply store. If you don't have one, don't worry about it. Use a wooden spoon. That works out pretty well. And I use an awl, and I found that at the store for bookmaking. They come in two sizes. One is a heavier duty awl, and one is a thinner awl. And I've also found them at the dollar stores. So that was about a year ago before the pandemic hit. But, you know, all these tools you can find all over the place. And if you don't have that kind of tool, whatever you have at home that will poke a hole in the spine, that would be great to use. Just try whatever you have. These are different kinds of paper. Whatever you have lying around. I had some echo printed papers that I might use as a cover one day, some marbled papers, and those were all on heavy paper, watercolor paper. So that came out. The pink and the gray and this blue cover is a cardstock, and I found that at the craft store, and the weight is a little bit heavier than the copy paper. I don't know how heavy it is because I found weights between 20 grams and 50 grams for cardstock, but it's a little heavier, but it's bendable. So that works out really nicely, and it's inexpensive. I also used wrapping paper that I found in the closet from one of the holidays that was left over. And I used that to make one of the covers. So that's nice and long. That works really well. Also, I would suggest paper bags, brown paper bags, and also a pastry paper. That has a nice weight to it. Okay. So that shows measuring the book. And this book, the pages are a little bit less than the cover. So I have the pages at 9.5 inches wide and 5.5 inches high. And that gave me a really nice page. And then for the cover, I made it a 1/4 inch
That's fine. Okay.
bigger
When he was
of an overlap so that it protects, the cover protects the pages inside. And a really nice idea to measure all the holes. These are 3 holes in here. And I made a jig out of a scrap piece of paper. So this jig, I fold it in half. It's about 1 inch wide. It can be any width because that really doesn't matter. And you lay that down on your book, and you want the first holes, the outside 2 holes, to be at least 1/2 inch in from the edge. That way, the tension on the thread isn't going to pull and tear the hole. And then the middle hole is halfway between the 2 outside holes. A lot of times I'll take another piece of paper and measure the distance between the 2 outside holes, and then fold that piece of paper in half, and then you get where the middle hole should be. And it's a nice time-saving idea. And then I mark those 3 holes down on this little jig, lay that on top of the papers, and lay the papers down on the cover. And then you can punch all 3 holes at the same time. And that gives you a really good clean register. A lot of times when I'm punching a hole, I try to keep the book at a 45-degree angle. And please remember your fingers. Keep them out of the way of all sharp objects, and try not to poke anything. And I keep the awl at a slight angle and go through it. I just really try to keep my fingers out of the way. Then this shows, yeah, there goes the cat. This shows threading the needle through, and we start in the middle, and I'm starting from the inside of the book, and it goes from the inside to the outside in the middle. And then I bring the thread around to the hole closer to the edge. It doesn't matter if you go right or left. And then it comes through to the inside again. And then the thread goes all the way down. There's the little piece of tape holding the thread, and that really makes your life easier. And there it is, the thread is coming back inside and it's going out again. And then we come back to the outside, bring it in, and when you have the end of the thread on the inside, I go under the thread that is already looped in the first two holes. So the third hole is coming in, and this gives it a little bit of strength. So I loop it under that thread, and then I bring the ends together and tie it into a knot. And in this case, I ended it in a bow. When you're starting out, try to get it tight. You can always do it a couple times. And use anything you can to keep it tight. That way you don't have a lot of slack, and it keeps the pages together. And it's really good to do a sample first and get yourself comfortable with it before you do the final book. Does anybody have any questions? I hope I'm not going too fast.
I just wanted to say thank you for that little tape and thread trick.
Oh, good.
That's really smart.
It really helps. The first time when I was learning to do a book, it was really a headache. So that really makes it easier. That's measuring out the thread. Four lengths usually does it. I like to have extra left over, so you don't have to add on another piece while you're doing this book.
I'm noticing that it looks like a two-sided paper. And I know that if you go to Michael's, they have plenty of two-sided papers in a cardstock that could be used for covers.
Yes, it's really nice and decorative. I was just pulling out everything I had on hand. And get yourself comfortable when you're working on the book, so you don't have to, you can line up all the holes. Take your time with it. Try not to knot the thread. It goes along really easily. The one thing when you're using a multi-strand thread, try not to go through the middle of the thread. Sometimes I have a hard time and I'll split the thread, and sometimes you want to start over, other times you can work with it. I like this pamphlet book. It can be used for a lot of things, little sketchbooks or notepads or just anything you're using it for. They really come in handy. And I like making them, so it's nice. And this is the next book. Once you get the hang of sewing through the cover, this little book looks really complicated, but it's really a lot of fun to do. This is a video of the cover, and whatever size the page is, you know, closed, then the cover is double that size. So it's one length and then a second length. Plus, I have 3/8 of an inch for this little spine that separates the two signatures. And one signature is made up of about, on my book, I think I put in about 5 pages. So I have a group of 5 pages here. I have this little middle spine that sticks up, and then a second signature of another 5 pages. And then the cover wraps around it. So we can watch the video again. This is the rounded spine, the double rounded spine. And I put the top in, and that little piece of paper is the width of the spine that is going to stick up. So I cut that out of a piece of cardstock. It's a little bit thicker and it holds its shape. And you're going to fold that. You're going to make a little crease in there. If you don't have a bone folder, use your ruler and just crease that little piece of paper. And then I made a jig for that also. Here I'm just measuring by hand. So I have the 2 outside holes and I have the middle hole. And then I realized I should fold that piece first. It helps line up the signatures a little better when you fold that. In the video, I'm doing the hole separately on the cover and then on the signatures, because the signatures were a little bit thicker, so it worked out okay. Whichever way it works for you, that's good. The second time, when I lined them up here at home, I made the signature. I folded the papers. I folded the little spine here, and I placed the paper along that line that bends, and then, yes, I have the second signature that goes in the back. So I lined that up with that crease. And then I lined them all up with the jig, remembering to put the top to go along with the top for the cover, to go along with the top for the pages. That way, all the holes should line up. And then I got these little clips, the alligator clips. I put one at the bottom, and I put one at the top. And that kept all the pages from wiggling around. And then I could do the middle holes and the outside holes. And that really seemed to line everything up pretty well. So this is a smaller book. And so again, I used 4 lengths of thread, and it worked out. I had a little left over, but after I measured from the top to the bottom 4 times, I had enough thread to go through all the holes, all the signatures and the cover, and to make a little tie. Now, because this has more complicated turns, you're going to have the tie on the inside. It can be in the first signature or it can be in the back signature, but it won't be on the outside. Just take your time with it. Things stay nice and loose while you're working on it. You can go through the holes at your pace, and then you tighten everything up after you get them all sewn. This time I sewed right through the middle of the thread because it's embroidery thread, and I was trying to get it unwound. So while you're sewing the piece, the pages can be all over the place. And once you start tugging on the thread, everything lines up and really stays tight and stays in place. Sometimes I've used a tweezers of some kind to keep the thread down so I can make a knot and keep it tight. That seems to help. It's like having a third hand. Some people, when they're just doing a nice little knot, they fray the edges, and it's a nice decorative way to end the knot. And I make a square knot, at the end. The first time you make a loop, you go in one direction, and the second time you make the knot, you go in the opposite direction. So if you're going with one thread over, the second time that thread goes under, and that becomes a square knot, and it won't come apart. When you're putting the cover together, after you've tied it all up, I bend it back on itself, so the outside comes into the inside, and then I'll fold it and go over it with a bone folder so it has a nice crease. And I make sure that the paper comes right up to the edge. And if there's too much, I don't bend it under because it's going to be loose, but I'll cut it along that edge. And then I tape everything down. I've been using double stick tape because this is a really thin paper. And if you use glue, weigh it down with a heavy book. Otherwise, it might crinkle and get wavy. So I give it like an hour or two to dry. If you use double stick tape, there's not a lot of extra moisture in it. But whatever you have on hand right now is just great. It works out fine. And these are tiny little books to use for notes or anything you want to use them for.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Would you mind holding a finished book up? Because I'm still not clear of what this binding is and the pop-up part.
Okay.
There you go.
Here are the two signatures. Okay. One is on the left, one's on the right. And this is just a decorative spine. And it comes from, I'm going to take this apart. You have one piece of paper.
Yep.
And I fold it in half. So this half that's on the inside becomes this spine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, the first time I had to go over it a couple times to understand what that was. So when you do that, then you're wrapping the outside around, and depending on the thickness of the paper, sometimes you can see it's more rounded.
I see that. Yes.
A good light on it. So it gives a nice bump to it. Can I give you more light? Yeah, I'm good. This is a little bit thinner, and I've used thin graph paper, so you don't get as much of a rounded part to it, but it's there. So there's two nice little bumps there. It's really decorative.
Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
And I know I'm jumping ahead probably, but the question is, if you want to be making books for people to write in or journal in,
Yeah.
which do you think, like composition books fail for me because they don't really lay flat when you've got your arm on them and you're writing with them? Do you think that this would be a good type of binding for that kind of purpose that will lay flat open as you're writing, as you turn the pages?
This one, yeah, this lays pretty flat.
It looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, the pages are thin. I think I only put like 5 in. 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I put 5 pages in, so you have 10, 20, which would last, you know, a couple weeks at least. And it's pretty comfortable to use.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Can I ask you a question? Have you ever made a book with fabric or with a fabric cover?
Yes, I did. It was a while ago, and I did pictures from the copier. They were chicken. It told a story, and I got my grandmother to write a recipe or a memory or something. And then he transferred the images onto the fabric.
Cool.
Yeah. So it works out nicely, but yeah, if you're thinking about doing a fabric book, that works.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'd like to comment that if I mean, we're going to come back in 2 weeks with some finished books, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure you're going to challenge us to be really creative. If we come up with some like smashing book cover, I can imagine that when we use up the pages, we can just resew new pages in if the cover is so fantastic.
Yes, you can do that. And put your pages into an envelope and save them, or resew them and put them away on your bookshelf. You can do all those things. And in this book, I was thinking it would be fun to see what everybody comes up with to put on their pages, or what things you can use to make into pages. So yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, so can you elaborate on that, you know, and give us a specific assignment for the next, because, you know, for those who are hearing the recording, we will be meeting again in 2 weeks, which is the end of March, and it's the date I think is March 28th.
Great.
It is.
At
the 28th.
1, yeah, again, it's the same time, beginning at 1 until whenever. And we're challenged to make books and bring them in to share with Neila. And that would be, you know, in 2 weeks. So Neila, why don't you kind of give us a challenge and, you know, send us off with some crazy ideas to explore.
Well, if you want to put some kind of envelope, make the pages into an envelope or some kind of envelope or pocket on the pages, and then you could tuck a message in there of some sort to someone. That would be kind of fun to see. And you know, what can you do with the cover? Does it have to be totally flat, or can you open it up with a window so you can see what's inside? I'd love to see, you know, what you do with that. Are there any other questions with this little book?
Yeah, actually, if I can try and relate the two books, the
Yeah.
first book you showed us is a 1 signature book,
Correct.
and the second is a 2 signature book
Yes,
with a little bit of a fold of the cover inward to separate the 2 signatures.
right.
So for the second book, when we measure the cover, we're going to have to allow for that little fold.
Right.
And at the end, we're also going to have to allow for folding the cover at the ends, right?
Yeah, yeah. I can give you the measurements that I used, and you could use that as a jumping off point if you want.
Okay, I think we put that in the materials list, actually,
Okay.
if I recall.
And I always make sure that I have more material for this cover than I need. And if you don't have enough, there's no reason why you can't use, you know, if you don't have enough to do 2 full covers, you can add another piece of paper, the same color or different color.
Just paste it in.
Yeah, just paste it in. Don't worry about it. You know, just have a good time with it. And sometimes it becomes a nice design element. So the next time it's not a mistake, you know, you just go and you use it again because you liked how it came out.
Sounds good.
Neila, it sounds to me like you've made the suggestion that we could actually create our pages first and sew them in after they're created. In other words, we could start with a whole book concept, create the pages, and put it together that way.
You could, yeah. Yeah, it would be a nice way to finish a design. Everybody's going to be coming at it from a different point. So whatever you're comfortable with would work out great.
And which book design would you say is more appropriate for a heavier weight paper than, say, a copier paper?
You could do either. I like the first one because you don't have to worry too much about it. There's not as many elements that you have to juggle. So either book would lend itself to a thicker paper if the cover is heavy enough. I think you have to think about the whole book and decide what papers you're going to use or what papers you have, and then decide how to do it. The first book is a really good basic book to use for just about anything. You can go as complicated or uncomplicated as you want to with it.
So Neila, we have a few more photographs of the end stages of that second book.
Yeah,
Should we
great.
take a look?
Sure.
Okay. Then you can describe what's going on.
I try to keep everything square, so I'm using the triangle.
So
And
here, you're about to fold the cover over on itself.
Yes. So I'm giving it a little bit of space, a little more space than the width of the page. So there's extra material there. And once I've folded the outer edge, I'm bringing it almost up to the page. And I'm putting down the double stick tape. I think I only did that on three sides. No, I did it on 4 sides. And then using a bone folder, it just gets a really good adhesion. Or a wooden spoon would work out really well.
Can I ask you another question about tools?
Yeah.
I saw you use the bone folder in a way that I've not seen it used before because I don't have one, obviously, is when you use the point to score to help with folding.
Right,
If I
right.
have a wooden spoon for pressing, what do you suggest I use to make that kind of a score that doesn't cut through the paper because it's clearly a rounded point?
Yeah, yeah. A silver knife, a silver kitchen knife,
Like a butter knife.
a butter knife would work.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
because you don't want to tear through the paper. So
Yeah, that's what I'm
whatever
afraid
you're
of.
using, just, be careful with it.
Okay,
And if you're worried about it leaving a mark, you can always take a piece of, say, tracing paper or something and lay that over the paper so that it's a buffer between the tool and the paper.
good
So
idea.
if you're
Thank you.
like, oh, I'm worried that I'll get a silver mark, we'll just, yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I'm just going to throw out a little challenge to folks. I'm really excited about making books for the time when we come back together. And I'm really excited to see what other people do. And I would love to see people take it the step further where they consider the content, and let's amuse ourselves with this challenge. And, and, I don't know what, just amuse ourselves. And another thing I'd like to throw out, just for thought, we don't have to make any decisions now, but I think it'd be really fun if we paired up and made books for each other. So I think I would be way more fun if I knew that I was creating a book for Tina and Tina knew she was creating a book for me. It would kind of push us, because I know that if I'm going to make one book, I'm probably going to make 3 books
Yeah.
of each design. So I'm just going to throw that out there, and people can email each other privately if they want to take up that challenge.
That's a great idea.
Um,
And then you have a partner. If you have questions, you can throw it back and forth. And have fun with it, just if it works for you, it's great. It works. Can't do it wrong.